Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this event, this gig event, the Brexit lockdown and staff shortages, how the British hospitality industry will recover. We've got three main speakers for you this morning, and we hope that the discussion that follows will help you understand and hopefully find ways through some of the difficult issues that the hospitality industry is facing at the present time. The format of the meeting is that I'll ask each of our three speakers to make a brief introduction just to tell you who they are and what they do. They're all very eminent and they know their stuff backwards, so I think you'll enjoy what they've got to say. I'll then ask them to speak in more detail about some of the issues that are affecting their particular sectors of the hospitality industry, and hopefully that will coincide and overlap with your own experiences to some degree. We know what an extraordinary impact COVID-19 has had on the hospitality industry. There's a very good report came out from the House of Commons Library recently, a briefing paper, which you may have seen, CPB 9111. That points out, for example, that as of early March this year, for example, the Office for National Statistics pointed out that 43% of hospitality businesses were trading compared to about 74% across all industries, so almost just half the number of hospitality businesses functioning compared to other businesses. 55% of hospitality businesses had temporarily paused trading compared to just 24%. Again, well, that's double that figure, 24% across all industries. And almost 1 in 5 hospitality businesses, around about 19%, had low confidence that their business would even survive over the next 3 months. And we've seen figures again, these are ONS figures, saying that from March until September, last year until September, the number of workers in the sector fell by something like 147,000, and clearly it's declined since then. So there's been enormous impacts. One might say catastrophic, except that I think it won't necessarily be catastrophic in the long run, but certainly in the short term, there've been fairly catastrophic results. So with that kind of background, I hope that, and I'm sure that our speakers will be able to fill us in and give us clear ideas about a way forward out of this situation that we're in at the moment. So if I could ask our panelists, first of all, Chanel Gale, perhaps you could just tell us who you are and let everybody know what you do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick. Hello. Yes, my name is Chanel and I work for Dorchester Collection. I've been working for them for the last 2.5 years. I work in their head office in the global sales team, looking after the UK market, specifically corporate groups for the 9 5-star luxury hotels globally. Previous to Dorchester Collection, I worked for a hotel representation company, GP Associates, and prior to that, the Savoy Hotel. So I've been in London for 6.5 years now, and previous to that, I started my hospitality experience in Vancouver, Canada, working for Four Seasons hotels there.
Fantastic, thank you, Chanel. Ben Wild-Hirons, could you also give us a little bit about your background, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm the head of client success and on-site operations for Festicket and Event Genius, one of the biggest festival ticketing and travel companies in the world. I'm in charge of the delivery of all our on-site tech, so sending our crew out to deliver access control and our cashless payment solutions. Previous to that, I've got another 10 or 15 years of experience working with various different event companies. And I've also run bars and pubs and restaurants and cocktail bars and coffee shops in the past as well. So I've quite a broad view on this.
Thank you very much, Ben. And Anthony Woodcock, our third speaker, please let us know a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Anthony. So MD of GIG. We provide creative contingent staffing solutions for hospitality, events, retail and warehousing. Background is in hospitality, so previously worked for IHG across Holiday Inn and Holiday Inn Express portfolios within the UK and Ireland. And my first job was a kitchen porter, so you know, it's start in the kitchen and work your way up, as they say. So certainly got enough experience of ground operations upwards.
Thank you. Some might say work your way down, but I don't know. Thank you very much for those introductions. And let's go around again now. And I want you to really just to speak about your experiences in the hospitality sector, the issues that are affecting you, and maybe some of the kind of ways forward, and then we can take that into a more general discussion. So again, Chanel, can I come back to you? And don't feel constrained about time. Just tell us exactly what the issues are for you.
Fantastic. Yeah, so all of the discussion points that we're having here today have directly impacted Dorchester Collection, Brexit, lockdown, and staffing shortages. So just to put into perspective how Brexit has impacted our hotels. So gearing up with our opening of our UK collection coming on the 17th of May, we had 50 positions available at Coworth Park, which is our hotel in Ascot. And for those 50 positions, we had 900 applications. And of those 900 applications, only 50% of them were, we were actually able to move forward with interviews due to visa regulations. So with Brexit, it's becoming a lot harder to be able to recruit talent from outside of the UK with these stricter visa restrictions. So that's kind of made us have to look more locally for our talent. But more than ever, the competition is fierce with being able to fill those positions with the talent that we want here within the UK. Equally for the pandemic, our hotels have all been significantly financially impacted by this last year, with the majority of them having to close for several months due to government regulations. We've been quite fortunate as a company that we haven't had to make any redundancies over this period. However, we have lost some incredible talent just due to people rethinking where they see themselves after the pandemic, and quite a few people deciding to go home during this period. So across our entire company, we've had about 600 decide to go home during this time, just for personal family reasons. So yes, we've really had financial struggles. That's kind of been the biggest impact for us over the last year since this pandemic, just not being able to run the business that with our hotels having not being open. But with that being said, the hospitality is an extremely resilient industry, and it's a fantastic industry to get into. And similar to Anthony's story, like myself, I started off less than 10 years ago as an office coordinator in housekeeping, and it's an industry that allows you with little experience to be able to grow and develop. And now I'm working in the global sales office here in London with Dorchester Collection. So it's an incredible industry to be able to foster young people and be able to train and develop them. And even putting that into perspective, the Dorchester Hotel in London has 25 different departments just within the hotel. So there's a lot of different job opportunities that you can grow and develop from accounting to front desk to food and beverage to sales. So it's an industry that I think, once these vaccines keep coming out, we will recover. And what we've been seeing, even with some of the green light corridors opening up for travel, how large those numbers have been for people wanting to go to those countries as soon as they're able to. So I think as soon as those borders start opening up, we are going to see quite a boom in travel. So I think we just need to continue to be patient and know that this is an industry that will come back. And I think when it comes back, it will be coming back stronger than ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chanel. Interesting portrait there in the sense of one particular sector. You've got a mixture of issues there, haven't you? You've got the fact that you're going to have to replace 600 people, maybe they won't all come back. But you've also got resilience that you mentioned, and I think that's an interesting combination. Ben, perhaps you could talk about your sector, which is probably a little bit different.
Sure, it is a little bit different. Yeah, I think obviously with the pandemic, contractors is what make up most of the events industry. Really, in events, the core of event companies is usually a very small team, and we fill all those extra roles during our busy periods in the summer with contractors. And because of all of the events cancelling in the last year, lots of contractors that we would usually reach out to have all had to go into survival mode and look for any opportunity they can to pick up other work. I've got friends and colleagues that have gone and worked in COVID testing centres, people who are binmen, Uber drivers. Everybody's sort of had to go and figure something out. And that's on one side of it. And that's the people and the contractors that have always worked in events and who really want to get back into it. They're, like I said, they're in survival mode, waiting for the opportunity to come back, which is great. But then on the other side of it, we've got the mass of people who run like the bars at festivals, where you may need 1,000 staff to run bars or help manage the gates, and those people are traditionally students, and they will have just gone in completely different sectors or gone in completely different directions now, and lots of those people that may have been interested in this the event sector may have decided that actually it's not worth the risk for them in the future now. So there's going to be a huge gap. A lot of students usually came and filled those positions, and who knows what they may up to now. So that's the impact of furlough. And then Brexit, obviously we run operations around the globe, and a lot in Europe, a lot in France, Germany, Croatia, Portugal, Spain, and we're now not able to just hop across the border and go and run an event with 30 crew. We now have to organise visas to get into every single one of these countries. So a lot of the contracts and deals that we put in place a year or two ago, now the costs for us have massively increased. Having to pay for all these visas and extra things, shipping and transport for equipment has now increased massively because of the pandemic. So all of those hidden costs are starting to mount up and are really providing a big challenge for us to overcome.
A very, very different portrait in a sense, isn't it, from the hospitality sector in hotels, and very specific problems there. Very interesting to hear that. Thank you, Ben. Anthony, would you take this on?
Yeah, sure. So I think, being a support function, and across multiple sectors, we sort of have seen all of the issues that both Chanel and Ben have touched on. Obviously, pre-pandemic, the majority of our business was hospitality. Throughout the pandemic, we've pivoted as a business because we've had to, and the majority of the work that we do now is in warehousing, or certainly has been until the last few weeks when hospitality started to trickle back through. We've been able to find our workers and our network of workers other opportunities. But obviously that creates a problem moving forward now in terms of hospitality opening back up. Will all of these workers come back to an industry that they used to work in? I think there are some hard truths there that we have to address ourselves about the hospitality industry and how we attract talent in terms of, whether they will all come back. I don't think they will. I think that would be a very wishful thinking way to look at it. But I think what the pandemic has done is certainly put a curtain over Brexit. I think a subject that 12 or 16 months ago, and probably the 12 months preceding that, was a huge concern for many in the industry from a staffing perspective, has somewhat happened under our noses. We've been focusing on the pandemic, and rightly so, but Brexit has been happening in the background. I think something like 300,000 hospitality staff have left London alone. And left indefinitely. So I think the effects of that are only really starting to be seen now as we start to open back up again. And I think, without wanting to paint a picture of doom and gloom, because I think there are solutions out there, and I think there are things that we can do. But I think from a labour and a staffing perspective, we're in a bit of a perfect storm with Brexit and the pandemic coming together, and the way that it's happened, and the timing of both of those. I think we are in a bit of a perfect storm. We've lost staff, but we're also sadly going to have to accept that we've lost staff to other industries, and some of that probably down to our own shortcomings, I think, in some cases. Not all of it. Obviously, the pandemic has given a lot of us no other option, but we have to look at how we can attract that talent back. And I think we have to accept that the industry in some areas needs rebranded, and how do we attract the young talent? Because at the minute, personally, I don't think that the younger generations view hospitality as a career, or certainly the career that I knew that it could be, and all the wonderful things about it. It's multiculturalism. It's, as Chanel said, its ability for progression is, second to none. All those wonderful things I don't think we talk about enough. I think the younger generation sort of looks at the industry and it still has that air of a bygone era of long hours and hard work and, for want of a better word, poor treatment. And I think we need to get away from that stigma and that image, very quickly, if we are going to draw any of this talent back. So, yeah, I think it's been a challenging year, and I think obviously Brexit has just impounded that, and we haven't really seen it. We haven't really understood it until recently, and those sorts of things have happened under our nose. I think there are some creative solutions to the problem. I think we have to look at how we staff our businesses, how we staff our operations, and be more flexible with that. We have to catch up with other industries in the way that they do that. I think, and that's not just a sales pitch for using businesses like mine. I think businesses themselves can do a better job internally of how they make their workforce more flexibly, and there are solutions on the market, gig being one, but there are others, as the BBC would say, that can support some of that, helping getting businesses back to their feet. So it's not all doom and gloom, but I think we would be stupid to not address the elephant in the room, which is we have a big mountain to climb. And sadly, just coming off the back of the pandemic, financially as well, the next couple of years are going to be an extremely big financial balancing act for many. So that hasn't helped the problem. But certainly, I think moving forward, we all need to start thinking a little bit more creatively.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Can I just ask you all maybe to just comment on this one point, because you've all mentioned different aspects of something which we're going to be speaking a lot about, obviously, which is finding staff and so on. Are you all convinced that those staff that have gone are not coming back, or what's your assessment of that particular point? Chanel, what do you think about that?
Yes, I think that it's a bit of a mix. I think that some of the staff that have left due to, wanting to be closer to their family or go back to their home countries, I think for the foreseeable future, we won't be seeing them coming back. That doesn't mean, though, down the line, they could return back to the hospitality industry. But then I think what we've been seeing within our company is that it's more due to the impacts of Brexit that we're having these troubles of seeing the talent be able to come back to the UK. So we've had a lot of people that have gone home during this last year of the pandemic, and they're struggling to be able to now get back into the UK to work again due to the difficulty with getting visas at the moment. So I think that's where our issues are. Is it's more related to Brexit and visas rather than talent wanting to return but are just unable to at the moment.
Ben, Anthony, on the same point.
I think there's a combination. I think we have to accept that we have lost some people, certainly from just our internal experience at Gig and what's happening and what we're seeing in the marketplace. Broadly speaking, waiters, waitresses, kitchen porters, etc., that have moved to warehousing are on the whole being paid a little bit more. And that's a difficult pill for us to swallow in an industry that's just been shut for a year. But we're going to have to look at how we pay people and how we treat people in terms of being able to draw them back. And other industries have had a boom in that period and are able to obviously afford a higher wage. And sadly, in some cases, we're now fighting over the same resource. So it is going to be a difficult challenge. But look, there are those that left hospitality who genuinely viewed it as a career, and they will come back because that is what they want to do and that is what they love, and the passion is still there. So it's not everyone's disappearing. We're never going to get them back. But we have to accept that there was a proportion of those people propping up the industry who were just doing it to generate income. And sadly, I think we've probably lost that element to other sectors. And it purely probably as simple as pay and certain elements of that. But they can go and work in a warehouse for more money and not have to deal with customers. And some people love that part of the job. That's why they do it. That's why they love it. And that's why they'll come back. And as I say, some people, and not always necessarily ones that you want to draw back, but purely just from a resourcing perspective of being able to keep our doors open and, and physically be able to look after our guests, we need a certain headcount in the business. some of those people will be lost to other sectors. So it's going to be a difficult balancing. I think we need to focus on the ones that we can get back and the ones that want to be in hospitality and the ones that love it as a career option, and help them to understand why they loved it in the first place, and help them understand what the future looks like for them and the opportunities that are there. And I think more so focus on how can we target the younger generations and look at 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line in the future in terms of bolstering the industry as a whole, and continuing to get a generation who will look at it as a career option and a career pathway.
And Ben, you have particular issues, as you said, in the sense of needing large numbers of people over a very short period of time. Is that a particular issue for you and your sector?
It is, yeah. I mean, we run the operations for some events scaling from 2,000 or 3,000 up to 50 or 60,000. So we may need a very small crew of 4 or 5, or maybe upwards of 30 or 40, specifically for what we do. And it used to be really easy. We'd have a small group of contractors, which were either uni students or people who had other contracted jobs with other festivals that would come and work for us regularly. And what we found is a lot of them in the last year have had to go and find other permanent jobs. They want to come back, but they now found themselves in a situation where they've got not necessarily permanent jobs, but semi-stable jobs that they know aren't at risk because of the pandemic at the moment. But the events industry is still changing daily. Every week we have festivals cancelling. Obviously, the travel restrictions have a big impact on us, being a global company. So we're teeing up our contractors and saying, look, we want you to come and run these events. We know we hope we're going to need you in the future, but then we're starting to have to let people down as the situation changes. And then as we let people down, they then start to think, well, actually, really, is it worth me coming back? Do I want to take that risk when I've got a comfortable position here at the moment? Do I want to wait another year, or do I just not want to come back into the events industry? And it's really difficult. Obviously, there are, as everybody else has said, there are that sort of core people that have been in events for a while and love it and are passionate about it, and then will hold on until they can come back. But that younger generation that we want to get passionate about it and train up and bring in, those are the people that we're really struggling to get them back on board when they can see a multitude of other possibilities elsewhere in different sectors. So yeah, same challenges, just on a slightly different scale and a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think Ben touched on a good point, in that it's not just about trying to encourage them back, but there is the uncertainty at the minute. That's going to be a challenge until hospitality gets to a point where we can all be certain and all be comfortable that our doors are going to stay open and we can continue to welcome guests and serve food and drinks 365 days of the year again with no interruptions and no issues, because the pandemic has left a lot of people uncertain. Why do I want to? I've gone and found another job. Why do I want to leave for an industry that's just being allowed to open its doors again when I have no idea whether it's going to be shut in 6 months' time, 3 months' time, and go through the same rigmarole? So I think that's something that will be a linchpin in terms of bringing people back, with that comfort and that certainty that the pandemic is behind us and we are moving forward, and certainly not taking any stumbles back.
I appreciate it. It is very early in the cycle, in a sense. I mean, we've gone through the kind of the sort of the worst aspects of sort of taking down the industry and removing staff, and that staff having to go and so on and so on. Are you beginning to think about what kind of creative solutions you can put forward in order to stabilize things? Is that process happening now, or are you still reacting? Let me ask that question.
I'm happy to jump in. So I think we're seeing from clients at the minute, sadly, a very reactive sort of approach. We've been in the background trying to speak to people for sort of 3-6 months, saying, look, we're still here. Let's have a conversation about what reopening looks like. I understand it. Everyone's got bigger priorities at the minute. And at the end of the day, that's our job. You lean on us when you need the support, and you lean on us when you need the help, and it's our problem to go and figure it out realistically. But I think it is a very reactive approach at the minute, and I think that's purely down to demand. No one can forecast anymore. No one has an idea of what accurate forecasting looks like. And, people are quiet one week and then they have an extremely busy weekend. We've got clients whose hotels have been shut and now they're reopening for quarantine purposes or whatever that looks like. And people are picking up business in so many different ways that it's very difficult to kind of control and understand what that demand looks like and what that forecast looks like in terms of support. I think where businesses need to try and get a little bit more creative is how they're doing it themselves internally. Like, that's what we're here for. We're here to help when you can't do it yourselves. But I think broadly speaking, businesses need to look at how they can be more flexible with their own internal resource that they do have. And obviously our software, and again, there are others that can do that for you, but we allow our clients to manage their own staff through our system. And what we're trying to push is, like, if you have a pool of staff in London across 4 or 5 different restaurants that you own as a group, or 3, 4, 5 different hotels that you own as a group, what's stopping someone that's been working at one hotel doing 4 hours there, walking 20 minutes across the road and going and working in the other for 4 hours? We need to get more creative about how we staff it. And I think that helps us. If we can do that, then we avoid having to deal with the conversations of, well, we need to pay minimum wage because we really can't afford it. If we can focus on making our operations as efficient as possible, then we can keep those headline wages as competitive as they need to be. And we can look at how we can do the savings elsewhere. But yeah, broadly speaking, I think we have found it very reactive at the minute. And I think, again, I don't want to be the voice of doom, but I do think from where we're seeing it, I think businesses will really have to start thinking about June and reopening fully and what that looks like, and get ahead of the game, because the back end of the year, I personally believe, will be extremely busy. I think people will want to go out and have the Christmas and the festive period that they didn't have last year. People will want to go to shops. When they go to shops, they're going to want to sit down and go to a restaurant and have a drink. I think it's going to be a very busy back end of the year. And I think if businesses aren't looking at that now, they're going to find themselves in a position where they physically are actually just unable to deal with the demand of the guests, and they're going to be turning down business, which in a period where they desperately need it.
I think I've personally seen that already, like going out in London to bars and restaurants, that you might have a pub with an enormous beer garden and half the tables are empty because they can only take so many bookings because they just don't physically have the staff to be able to. Ordinarily, you'd be able to wander in, take a seat anywhere, and they'd be happy for your custom. But people just can't cope with the demand at the moment, and it's quite frustrating as a customer as well.
I think that though, the positive side of that is showing that now that things are starting to ease and restrictions are getting a bit better for us, that there is such a high demand. And from talking to a lot of corporate companies out there, some of the top 10 consultancy companies, private equity, tech and IT, these companies that have actually done extremely well during the pandemic. They've all been sharing that as soon as government regulations allow, they want to get back to planning team building activities, planning offsites, booking incentives, and being able to get out there and meet back to face. So I think that goes to show that, similarly, as both of you have mentioned, yes, it is so important to be able to get the amount of staff that we need in order to support that. But it also shows a bright future ahead for hospitality, that as soon as we are allowed, people are eager to get back to meeting in person and face to face. And I think there's been a large amount of Zoom fatigue across all companies. And I've heard from a number of companies that, what can take hours to get an idea or a brainstorm across on a Zoom call takes minutes when you're in person. And there's nothing that beats that face-to-face contact and that networking and the ability to kind of bring people together and move the company forward. So yes, I think that it is just so important to make sure that we are giving those opportunities as companies to those people that are eager to get back into the industry, because once the restrictions are lifted, I think we're going to see, similarly to what happened in the Roaring '20s happen after this pandemic.
This is a very interesting point, I think, and Anthony, you made this point very well, in the sense that the back end of the year may well be a massive amount of pent-up demand suddenly being released. Are there sort of strategies that businesses can think about now that can make sure that they don't miss the crest of that wave, because if that is coming, then the people that are prepared for it are going to be the winners, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think there is no doubt it is going to be busy, and there is no doubt that there is plenty of business out there. And I think, as I say, I think the last 3 months of the year will be very good for hospitality, and it's exactly what it needs, and it's exactly what everybody wants. Everyone wants to get out of the house and go and do the things that they haven't been able to do, and that's fantastic. I think, but it will be about who is prepared to be able to deliver that, and people need to start thinking about that now. This is not a conversation around can we just be better at staffing. Some people, there will be winners and losers purely down to the fact of whether or not they can deliver the demand of their clients based on how many staff they can attract. We are going to have a staffing shortage if we don't have one already, and I think that is clear. And I think anyone that kind of is trying to assume that they will just be able to carry on the same recruitment strategies that they had in the past is burying their head in the sand. I think really, if you want to be able to deal with, and certainly I think the back end of the year and onwards, we really need to start thinking differently. And I think, obviously, of course, I would say that, but businesses themselves need to start looking at the types of approach that gig takes to the market and try and do that themselves, or similar companies like ours. Can you offer more flexible working environments to your staff? I think that's what people want, especially that younger generation, in terms of being able to attract them into the industry and keep them there. We need to be able to offer more flexible environments. People don't want to be stuck down to set shift patterns and set rotas. They want the flexibility in their working life that they can get elsewhere. And I think businesses internally need to do a better job of that. We need to start looking at a wider recruitment pool. There are not enough people to fill those shift patterns, but there are stay-at-home parents who want to pick up extra hours. Students, for example, who, of course, are very flaky when they won't work and when they don't work, but they're a great resource pool in terms of being able to deal with influxes in demand for set periods throughout the year. So there are certain pots of the community that we need to start targeting from a recruitment perspective, giving them the opportunities to find that work in our industry, as opposed to just looking at, I need someone who can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday every single week for the next 2 years. We need to park that thinking and move a lot more forward into what is the demand, what do I need to fill, and look at a much wider pool in terms of how you get that to work for you. Again, I think businesses that do have multiple sites should start to look at how they can share that labour across those sites. Not everyone's bars and restaurants in certain locations are always as busy as each other at exactly the same times. So how can I use that staffing pool in other areas of my business to support other parts of my business that are perhaps busier at certain periods? So there are lots of things that we can do already. And I think lots of businesses need to start thinking about that now, start trialing those if it's a different way of working for them, because nothing ever happens, like clockwork overnight. Start trying to get that, embedded within the company culture, and try and do that now before we get to June. Because if you try and put those things in place in June, those that are already doing it will be running away with it, and you'll be left in the blocks, so to speak.
Ben, do you want to come in on that? I mean, what I would like to refer to in a sense as sort of immediate and short-term problems facing the industry. We can go on, I think, in a minute to speak about some longer-term solutions. But any of these other kind of points that relate to how, bearing in mind there is likely to be a massive release of all this pent-up demand at some point, how you can maneuver, if you're smart, now in order to make the most of that.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing that pent-up demand. As soon as the initial announcement came from the government back in March, all of our events started selling out immediately. And because of the 21st of June restriction, events have all pushed back in the year. They want to give themselves a little bit more space in case anything is pushed a little further. So September for us is going to be the busiest month. Usually that's starting to be the sort of tail end of the summer. But June, July, August should be the middle of it. But now everything's shifting back, and even into October. So we've now got a little bit of time to sort of scale up, but we are going to have to hit the ground running here. And we're going to go from a weekend before, or 2 or 3 weeks before, with maybe 1 or 2 events, to then potentially 15, 20 events globally, all at exactly the same time. And so we've got to figure out how we get enough people on board there's varying different roles that we recruit for, but we work a lot. We're a technology company, really, with the stuff that we deliver on the ground. So having to find that balance between finding people with certain skill sets that we need to fill sort of those mid-range roles, but then finding really boots on the ground is almost what we need for a lot of our events. But how do we attract those people when we say, like, we know we're going to need you in 3 months' time, definitely, almost definitely, in September, we're going to have all these events on, we're going to have to offer you a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks of solid work. But up until then, we're not really sure. So we're really struggling to be able to start recruiting people and building up their skill set so that when we do get to those busy periods, we've got enough people to be able to run all of these events simultaneously. So it's a really fine balancing game. We're currently having to plan as if everything is going to go ahead, because that's the only way to do it. If on the 21st of June all the restrictions lift, as we hope, then we may be flat out from the beginning of June. We may have more events pop up. We may get even busier. So if we don't plan for it now and everything goes ahead, we're going to get caught short, and then that's going to roll on and affect all of our clients, not just some of them. So it's a really difficult balancing game. I mean, from back when running restaurants and bars, like, staff rotas have and always will be the bane of my life, as I'm sure Chanel and Anthony can attest to. It's so difficult managing people and where you want them to be and where you need them to be at any given point. And when you can't be forecast, you've got absolutely nowhere to start. It's a finger in the air at the moment.
And Chanel, I mean, obviously the sort of luxury hotel business is a seasonal business to some degree anyway, isn't it? But how are you beginning to think about this issue of how you ensure a steady supply of the right quality of staff? I guess you need a lot of trained staff, don't you? You can't really take too many newcomers.
So we as a company have been quite fortunate over the last year in terms of where our hotels are located, with making the most of the government support schemes that have been given and the tax reliefs that are out there. So we've really made use of all of that. So a large portion of our 3 hotels in the UK have been fully utilizing furlough during this time, which has really helped us to be able to retain our staff during the pandemic. So, and we also have incredible owners that have been able to support us, and our CEO, Mr. Christopher Cowdrey, it's been his utmost importance to ensure that there has been no redundancies made across our company, because he believes that the people within the company is what makes Dorchester Collection. And when we are coming out of this pandemic and the volumes are starting to pick up, we want to be that collection that when guests come back, they see the same faces they saw before the pandemic, and there isn't any negative shift in service due to losing talent during this time. So yes, we've thoroughly made use of all of those government schemes and all of those tax reliefs, which has allowed us to be able to maintain the majority of our staff. And we have seen from the some positions that have recently opened up, with our hotels coming to open next week. As I mentioned earlier with Coworth Park, there certainly isn't a lack of interest in positions when they are coming available. So as I mentioned earlier, we had 50 positions available at Coworth Park and over 900 applications for those 50 positions. So we certainly are making the vacancies available as and when the demand is there, and filling those accordingly. Specifically focused on local talent, just again due to, unfortunately, some of the visa restrictions that we've come across with our European with Europeans trying to come back into the UK. But with that being said, although it's looking really great for our UK hotels with being able to open on the 17th of May, the other hotels we have in our collection within Europe are in Italy and France, and it's still looking challenging there in terms of where they are compared to the UK in being able to start opening the hotels and the ease of restriction, and where they are in terms of vaccinations to compare to here. But we do also have 2 hotels in Los Angeles, and what we have been seeing there is they are more advanced than they are here in terms of being able to open the hotels, and we have seen a large amount of demand as soon as the restrictions have started to ease for those hotels. So again, showing that once we are able to open, people are really eager to come back, and I think especially more than ever are wanting that luxurious experience, because they've been so deprived of that over the last year that they're wanting to actually spend that bit of extra money to receive that 5-star service and really feel spoilt because they haven't had that opportunity over the last year.
Okay, I think I get from hearing what all 3 of you are saying, in a sense, is that it's very important to be aware of the sort of modality of things, the way things are moving, and the speed at which the businesses are likely to pick up. And it is the people that are strategic and are able to solve these short-term problems that are going to benefit. That seems to me the message that all of you are projecting out there. Can I just move this on slightly now and just talk about your perceptions and your thoughts about how the country, in a sense, but how the educational institutions and others are able to service your industries? Because things are changing quite rapidly, do we need to really think about the way in which colleges train people to come into the industry? Is enough being done there? Are you yourselves engaged in this process, in this dialogue, to ensure that you get the right kind of people available for your businesses?
I think that's a really good point. Sorry, Anthony. Yeah, I think so. Within the events industry, there are obviously quite a lot of unis around the UK that offer events courses, which is great to skill people up to how to run events. And we have in the past had quite a lot of people. One of our offices is based in Leeds, and so we get a lot of people from Leeds University on their event course, which do reach out to us, or we've tried to work with them in the past to actively try and get people from the uni course into our events so we can give them some real world experience. Because generally what we found is some of the university courses, they're really good at showing you how to do health and safety paperwork and how to put an event together on paper, but when people come out of university and they've never set foot in a field, it's actually really difficult to bring them up to speed as to how an event actually works. And so I think we need to start working with the universities better, and they need to be giving people much more practical on the ground experience in our specific industry to help them walk out of university straight into a field. I know it's a case with a lot of different university degrees, is that really what you learn there gives you the fundamentals, but until you actually start doing a job, you don't really know anything. But I think that will make a big difference. I understand obviously in hospitality courses, there's a lot more technical skill that is taught during those courses, and they're a lot more technical and a lot more practical. And I think events, we need to get into more of that side of training and teaching people, for sure.
I still think that the same applies, Ben, to be honest, and I completely agree. I think actually in hospitality, yes, there are more practical elements to it, but I think there's still practical elements that are taught in colleges and in college classrooms from a practical setting, but are they doing that, in a real life environment? And I think it's, colleges can only go so far, but without the support of hotels and restaurants and events companies prepared to, provide opportunities to those students to come and get that experience firsthand, there's only so far they can go. And I think that's the key part here is the both sides need to work better together to help get people and give people the practical opportunities that they need. So definitely, I think that's part of it. We can't just expect colleges to provide us with a stream of highly trained, ready to rock hospitality and events professionals. They've got a job to do, but we have to help them to do it. And I think the industry has to take on some of that not burden, but they have to take on some of that responsibility. I think I know I shouldn't be going outside the box, but a question from Olive, which kind of links to this, I guess, discussion. Apprenticeships for me play a massive part, I think, in the recovery. I think they're a huge opportunity. I think it's something that businesses overlook, and I think it's something that we should do better. We have our own apprenticeships at Gig. We provide hospitality apprenticeships for staff. We work in conjunction with our clients to make sure that they are getting the hours that they need from the practical perspective, while still being able to have the right amount of time to do the theory part of that. But the one thing I would say in terms of using apprenticeships as part of the recovery, yes, we should do it, and it's very important, but only if we're paying those apprentices the same amount of money as a standard employee. We cannot just use apprenticeships so that we can pay people £4.30 an hour to help our recovery, because that just defeats the purpose. Yes, use apprenticeships, but use them responsibly and use them well. And I think that they will play a big part in our recovery if industry is prepared to get on board with it and is prepared to accept and help train and tutor these people. Businesses can't expect to get the same amount of trained staff that they used to get. They have to be open to doing a lot more training themselves and be part of that overall process moving forward. I think is going to be key.
Chanel, any other comments from you on that point?
Yes, I'd say from like a hotel perspective, I think what's so a beautiful thing about our industry is that you can go into it with not a lot of experience, and a lot of hotels out there will give you that training and development that you need in order to grow and go into a number of different departments. So even speaking of a story from Dorchester Collection, so our head of people and culture for all of Dorchester Collection, Genio Perrier, 30 years ago, he started off as a rooms cleaner, and he's kind of worked his way up through different departments within the hotel, and now is that head of our HR within our whole company. And there's so many stories like that within hospitality, and specifically in hotels, where people have, come out of, back in Canada, we'd say high school, come out of high school and not know where they want to go, or not sure which career they want to get into. And I think it's a great opportunity for you to be able to explore a number of different areas that you could find passion for, whether that be accounting or sales or customer service or food and beverage. There's just so many different avenues you can take within a hotel and be able to find a passion through that. But equally, there is a lot of people within our industry that have come with a hospitality-specific education, and I think what the benefit of having that education behind you can support you in kind of being able to work through the different kind of the chain of roles within a company much quicker than perhaps someone who doesn't have that already education behind them. So you can kind of climb the corporate ladder a bit quicker if you've got that specific education behind you, and that can also assist with even potentially getting a higher wage within the company, having that education behind you. So I think that, but similarly to what Anthony and Ben said, I think it's so important to be able to offer those opportunities, especially for people that are coming out of college or university or looking to come into the hospitality industry, and having that apprenticeship or that internship program that can give them that insight to what it's like to work in hotels, and really show them first-handedly why it's such a fantastic industry to work in, and where that, and be able to grow their passion that way. Us as a company, Dorchester Collection, we work with a lot of hospitality focused colleges and universities across the UK, where our HR team often will go into these schools and educate them about opportunities and career growth within our company. So I think it's really important for companies also to get involved with those colleges and universities and first-handedly educate them on what their company can have to offer, and where a career could end up with that organization. So we know that that's really important for us to be involved with those universities. So that's why we have a really strong relationships with a number of them within the UK.
You've all spoken very inspirationally about your industry. I'm now thinking of retraining, by the way, as a sous chef, because but I think there is an issue about how do we, how do you shift public perception to draw people into this industry? I mean, it's interesting what you say. I mean, you mentioned that, sorry, Chanel, you mentioned that, one of your senior figures started off you mentioned several people. Perhaps you should run a series of posters which has got all these top people and right underneath room cleaner, sous chef, etc., and point out that that's where they started. But there has to be some sort of strategy, doesn't there, to kind of, in these specific circumstances where we may have lost a large number of people who won't necessarily be coming back, if you're trying to attract people into the industry, to keep them loyal to you. And as Anthony said, I think apprenticeships are a very good way of breeding loyalty in a way, aren't they? If you've done a good apprenticeship, you're going to have a certain amount of loyalty to that company. But what kind of strategies do you think can be used to draw people into the industry?
I think the short term and long term, and long term, what you're saying there around rebranding that vision of what a career in hospitality looks like and how far you can go. I think that's exactly what needs to happen, and I think that involves everyone in being able to do that and create the right environments that people want to come and work in and have those careers. But that's not going to happen overnight. That's something that is there, but it's going to take a collective effort to change. And we touched on relationships with colleges. That's going to be a collective effort across the board to change the perception of the industry for a younger generation in terms of how we can solve this problem in the long term, 3-5 years down the line. I think short term, we just have to be seen as competitive as other industries in terms of not comparing roles, but a waiter or a waitress is realistically also looking at the same price point as a warehouse operative. Well, we need to make sure that we're not undervaluing those types of roles in our organizations, are paying appropriately. We've being part of an agency, I guess, in terms of how we supply our staff, and having worked with hospitality for over a decade and providing that staff, 9 times out of 10, generally speaking, it's minimum wage, and we've made a commitment now that we're just not going to do it moving forward unless it's at $9.50 and above, because realistically, minimum wage is not sustainable. It's really not fair when they can go somewhere else and make more money to do a less pressured job, probably in certain circumstances, and not have to smile for your customers. So I think in terms of in the short term, we just have to show those people the value that they deserve in terms of being able to draw them back. Longer term, there's a much bigger piece of work that needs to be done around rebranding the industry, making it attractive for the younger generation. And I think there's a lot that needs to go into that. I think the ideas that you've said there, that for me is the core of it. You really can go far in hospitality from really starting at the bottom and working your way right up to the top. I think Keith Barr at IHG started as a chef. He's now the CEO. Right? We hear these stories day in, day out in hospitality, but we don't really sing about them as much as we probably should. And that's what people need to understand in terms of the younger generation, I think. So there's 2 strategies. I think there's a here and now, there's an immediate, and what we need to do over the next 6 to 12 months. And I think, broadly speaking, there's a rebrand. It would be the nicest way of putting it, I think, in terms of how do we draw the younger talent into the business.
We've got quite an even more difficult situation in the sort of festival and events industry, is that the majority of people who sort of build and run from a production side of things at events are contractors. And obviously during furlough, the pandemic has left a lot of people without any work. And so it's made them reassess. They want to stay working for the events industry, but they now don't want to do it as a contractor. I myself, up until 2 months before the pandemic, was a contractor. And had I not started in a full-time position, I would have had no work for the last year, and I would have really struggled. So we're finding a lot of people they want to come back, but they just can't afford the risk anymore. So I think with it, the problem that the companies that employ these contractors have is that our busy period is in such a short timescale from May, June till September, is that we can't afford to fully employ people for the whole year round because there just isn't the work. But that's not really sustainable, because if we keep looking for people for those short-term roles, less and less people are going to want to take those short-term roles because of the risk. So now we've got to figure out, well, how do we? I don't know what the answer to the solution is. Like, how do we get people to commit to working for us year on, year out, and how do we provide them some better form of stability going forwards? That's what we've got to figure out. Otherwise, we are just going to keep losing people to other industries. And I honestly, if anybody has any suggestions as to how we can do that, that would be great.
I think broadly speaking, as long as the experience that they have with you is a positive one, they'll I would say they'll come back 9 times out of 10. I think people do want to work more flexibly, and so just because there's a 3-month contract, I don't think, or it's just for the summer or whatever, I don't think that puts people off, as long as there are then further opportunities within the industry to go and pick up additional work at sensible pay in good working conditions, and we create an environment as a whole, not just individually as our businesses, but we create an environment as a whole throughout events and hospitality where it is a place that you can move around and experience the same. Then we should be looking at how we keep them in the collective, not how we keep them coming back for us, because the moment they leave the industry, it's a lot harder to get them back. But
yeah. I think one of the great things that I've seen during this pandemic, and obviously it's always happened in our industry, is that whenever work has come up that somebody hasn't been able to do, they'll immediately contact everyone they know and see who's available, who wants to work, or they hear of a job and they'll pass it on to someone. So there's been a real sense of community in the last year about people making sure they're keeping as many people involved so they don't have to leave. And that's been really, really great to see.
Yeah, I think for me, there's just been this HR mindset for a very long time around retention. And retention's a good word, but not when it's used for how do I retain. Yeah, okay, you want to retain your staff. I think we just have to accept that people move around in terms of job hopping a lot more than they did before. And is that necessarily a bad thing? I don't think it is. I think it's good to have fresh blood come into your business, as long as that when they're with you, you train them and give them the opportunities that they need. And quite rightly so, there probably is a point where they reach the ceiling in your organisation and they need to move on and go somewhere else. And that's great. They're getting an opportunity. But we need to look at retention within an industry and as a collective, as opposed to how do I keep my staff to myself? If we're all working and singing from the same hymn sheet, then you will have plenty of people who will come and do it for 4, 5, 6 weeks to do your event, because they can go and get work elsewhere, after the event in a same type of environment, and they'll stick within hospitality and they'll move around, as opposed to I'm going to go and work in a warehouse or work in a supermarket and, essentially pick up the same amount of money, if not more.
Well, listen, we're moving towards a close here. As I said at the beginning, this hour is going to fly, and it certainly has flown. Very, very interesting discussion, I think. And it seems to me that the interesting thing is that at least you, our 3 speakers here, are all thinking about how to resolve these problems. We can't say from this discussion that these problems have been resolved, but everybody is clearly thinking about how to get round very particular problems for their particular industries. And I think that's a very good sign. We can't maybe hope for an awful lot more than that at this moment. But can I just ask you now, we've got 2 minutes left really, just very briefly, just to give me your thoughts on what we've discussed in this meeting today. Chanel, if you could just come into us first.
Yes, I think, it's been a great session and some great discussions that we've had today. And I think we just need to remind ourselves that hospitality is a very resilient industry, and we are going to be seeing a big boom once travel corridors start opening up and we are able to get to be able to meet with one another, and we need to remember the importance of maintaining and keeping that talent within our industry. And I think a lot of that stems around reminding people of the opportunities within our companies of growing and development, and of all of the opportunities of being able to progress within an organization, and as well as just reminding people of the passion that is within our industry and why we love doing what we're doing. And I think a lot of it is around people.
Thank you very much. Ben, very briefly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree. And I think we need to figure out how to work better together as an industry as a whole to help support everybody.
Thank you very much. And Anthony?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot of positives. I think there's going to be a very busy back end of the year. I think everyone is craving, those hospitality experiences that they have missed so much. And I think the industry is in a great position to be able to give people what they've been missing. I think we just need to, now is the time to reinvent ourselves and make those steps for positive change. I think in an industry that probably need it and probably would have got there in the end, but we're just having to move a hell of a lot quicker because of everything that's happened in the last year.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for participating. Thank you for our audience. And we've had some really good comments, which is great news. And come to our next event if you possibly can. And please take inspiration from our three speakers today, who I think have all indicated extremely good and positive ways forward. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.